If you know me, then you know that I am a history nerd. I enjoy learning about forgotten places and people. And very often, that brings me to cemeteries. Cemeteries, they hold the history of your towns and your families. But today, it's not the people that I'm interested in. It's the things. Last year, I started coming up to the Leavenworth National Cemetery to sit up on the loop that is on the southeast corner of the cemetery to watch a sunrise. It's gorgeous. You can see the whole Missouri River Valley up there. Highly recommend it. But off to the south of that location is a monument. It's a cement cross. And I have been curious about it for too long. So I finally decided that I was going to call the cemetery that runs that area in Lansing, called Mount Muncie Cemetery, and see if I could get back there to take a peek at it. And while standing here at this pavilion at the Leavenworth National Cemetery, off in the distance, you can see a building that is tucked into the hill. Also has my curiosity, and thankfully also had the curiosity of my friend Melissa. And while we were touring Mount Muncie, we made sure our tour guide took us down to that place too. So before we take a peek at those places with the manager of that cemetery, we're going to drive up here at the Leavenworth National Cemetery and see what we can see of them ourselves and see if we can solve any mysteries, cure my curiosities. The place that's tucked in the hill, you can barely see the outline of between these two trees. And in the middle of it is quite a big archway. All my life I've been told that this is a crematorium. I think my mother was just trying to scare me though. There is a clearer view of that building that's tucked in the hill, the red brick building with the big arch. Surrounded by a couple of ponds. Here is a little better view of those buildings built into the hillside. There's a red brick one. And then to the left of it is a white one tucked in the hill. Can you see them? Yeah! This is the location of my old friends, as I call them. And I like to come up here and enjoy sunrises with them on Sundays. And this fence marks the end of the Leavenworth National Cemetery grounds and the beginning of the city of Lansing. And it is over here where we find our cross, our mysterious cross. I put out on Facebook, does anybody know about this cross? Does anybody know anybody who can get me to that cross? And a lot of people weighed in as to what they thought was buried in that field, who some infamous murderers from the Truman Capote book In Cold Blood. They're buried in that cemetery. They are not buried there. What that is a potter's field. And people who were poor or unclaimed when they died, that is where they were buried. There are not many people in there. And the story behind the cross, we will discover, is an interesting one. And sad. We are crossing the dam at the cemetery.
Like, what are these people taking pictures?
So, the story with the cross. In 1965, an 8-year-old boy was buried up there in the potter's field. And it turned out that he was beaten to death by his father. And some local people in this town donated their services and their goods and their talents to make that cross. and sort of in memory of that little boy, and his name was Roy Nelson. And it's a very, very peaceful place up there, and for such a sad story, something good, some good in our community came out of it. So rest in peace, Roy. Of what I could find of record, the first burial up in the Potter's Field was in 1912, and the last burial was in 2008. And now, in present day, bodies that were unclaimed or are too poor to afford burial in a cemetery are often cremated, and then their ashes are just stored in a facility. Right here on the edge of Mount Muncie, over there in the distance you can see Leavenworth National Cemetery. Right below where my girls are walking there is the White Mausoleum. White Mausoleum was built by a family and then never used. And it's peculiar that they built it into the hillside. And there are a lot of other mausoleums here at Mount Muncie Cemetery, up here in the main area of the cemetery. That's quite a descent down to the ponds where the other one is built into the hill.
Not allowed anymore because
There's
a big one up on the hill up here, and a lady came out and it was her grandparents, and we got talking about it.
This is an unfinished mausoleum, they think. There's a tree growing out of the top of it.
like a chimney vent.
Yeah.
But look at
Yeah. Well, you have to. Yeah.
what's behind. Serene. So right below where I'm standing here, through the brush and down the hill, is the big brick crypt. That's right. It's not a crematorium.
And the policeman said, "Who's your grandma, grandpa?" And the kid told him, and the cop says to me,
This is a site that can be seen from the VA Leavenworth National Cemetery, and all my life was told this was a crematorium, but it isn't. It is where, when it would get cold, they would store coffins until they could dig up the ground to bury loved ones. So, now you know. If you'd like to see for yourself, well, I wouldn't advise going down there without permission. There are no trespassing signs, and the manager of the cemetery will call the police. He won't even hesitate. So, get permission. Otherwise, hopefully I have helped cure your curiosity too. See you next time.